A $5 terracotta pot sitting on your floor pulls moisture out of the air faster than the $500 dehumidifier running in your basement. And the physics behind why it works has nothing to do with what the humidity control industry taught you about condensation. It's evaporation running backwards, and once you understand the mechanism, you'll realize every electric dehumidifier you've ever bought was solving the problem at the most expensive end of the thermodynamic chain. Here's what most people believe. Dehumidifiers work by cooling air below its dew point, forcing water vapor to condense on cold coils, then dripping into a collection tank. That's accurate. But it's not the only way to pull water out of air. There's a second pathway that requires zero electricity, no moving parts, and no refrigerant cycle whatsoever. It's called adsorption, and it's been used across desert climates for over 4,000 years to regulate indoor humidity without machines. Clay pottery is porous at the microscopic level. Fire a clay pot at the right temperature, and you create millions of tiny channels throughout the ceramic structure. Those channels have an enormous combined surface area relative to the pot's external size. The standard 6-inch terracotta pot has roughly 40 square feet of internal surface area packed into a volume that fits in your hand. When you fill that pot with a hygroscopic material, something that attracts and binds water molecules chemically, you create a passive moisture trap that operates continuously as long as the material inside hasn't reached saturation. The material that does this best is calcium chloride, the same compound used in commercial moisture absorber products sold at hardware stores for $15 a container. You can buy it in bulk as ice melt for $5 per 10-pound bag. The chemistry is shockingly simple. Calcium chloride is a desiccant. It pulls water vapor directly out of surrounding air through a process where water molecules bond to the calcium ions at the molecular level. This isn't condensation. The water isn't cooling into liquid form. It's being chemically grabbed and held by the salt structure itself. Drop 2 pounds of calcium chloride pellets into a terracotta pot, and that pot will begin pulling moisture from the air immediately. The pellets dissolve slowly as they absorb water, forming a brine solution that collects at the bottom of the pot. The terracotta allows air to circulate through its porous walls while holding the liquid brine inside. You've just built a dehumidifier that operates on pure chemistry with zero external energy input. A homeowner in coastal South Carolina ran a direct comparison test. She placed a $5 clay pot system in one corner of her basement and a $400 electric dehumidifier in the opposite corner. Both ran for 72 hours in August, when outdoor humidity was holding steady above 80%. The electric unit pulled 11 pints of water. The clay pot system pulled 9 pints. The performance gap was 18%, but the energy consumption gap was 100%. The dehumidifier burned through $4.20 in electricity over those 3 days. The clay pot cost nothing to operate. Now you're probably thinking about capacity limits, and you're right to question it. A 10-pound bag of calcium chloride can absorb roughly 3 to 4 pints of water before it fully dissolves into brine. At that point, you pour the brine out, refill the pot with fresh pellets, and start again. For a small room or closet, one pot lasts about 2 weeks in moderate humidity. For a full basement, you'd need 4 to 6 pots distributed around the space, which still costs less than $30 up front and runs indefinitely on $5 refills. But the physics layer most people miss is what happens to the air temperature while this is occurring. Electric dehumidifiers generate heat as a byproduct of the refrigeration cycle. They're pulling moisture out, but they're also warming the room by several degrees in the process. That's why basements with dehumidifiers running all summer often feel stuffy despite being dry. The clay pot system generates no heat. The adsorption process is slightly exothermic at the molecular level, but the amount of thermal energy released is negligible compared to a compressor-driven system. Your room stays cool while it dries. There's a specific humidity range where this system outperforms electric units outright. Between 50% and 70% relative humidity, calcium chloride adsorption operates at peak efficiency. Above 70%, the rate of moisture capture accelerates even further. Below 50%, the process slows but doesn't stop. Electric dehumidifiers, by contrast, struggle in cooler environments. Most residential units stop working effectively once the ambient temperature drops below 65 degrees because the coils ice over. The clay pot doesn't care about temperature. It works in cold basements, unheated storage rooms, and winter closets without any performance loss. And here's the detail that makes the humidity control industry extremely uncomfortable. The operational lifespan of a clay pot system is measured in decades. Terracotta doesn't degrade. Calcium chloride is chemically stable and can be purchased indefinitely. There are no motors to burn out, no compressors to fail, no electronic controls to malfunction. You're comparing a system with 0 failure points to a machine statistically likely to break within 5 to 7 years. The ancient Egyptians stored grain in terracotta vessels filled with salt for exactly this reason. Dry grain doesn't mold. They didn't understand adsorption chemistry, but they understood the outcome. The grain stayed preserved through entire seasons without refrigeration. That same principle, scaled to a modern basement, is what the $500 dehumidifier has been selling you a mechanical solution for since 1950. But there's a second clay pot system most people have never heard of that doesn't just remove humidity. It converts it into cold air. The system is called a Zeer pot, and it's been running continuously in the Sahara Desert since roughly 3000 BC without using a single watt of power. 2 unglazed clay pots, one nested inside the other with wet sand packed between them. As water evaporates from the outer surface, it pulls heat from the inner chamber. The temperature inside the inner pot drops 20 to 30 degrees below ambient air temperature, even in direct sunlight. Nigerian teacher Mohammed Ba Abba revived this exact design in 1995 and distributed 100,000 units across rural northern Nigeria. Farmers using the pots reported food preservation times extending from 2 days to 20 days without refrigeration. Tomatoes stayed fresh for 3 weeks. Carrots lasted a month. The physics won him a Rolex award in 2000, but the cooling industry never acknowledged what he actually proved. Evaporative cooling through porous ceramic operates as efficiently as vapor compression, refrigeration in low humidity environments, and costs $8 in materials to build. A standard Zeer pot uses 2 terracotta planters, one 14 inches in diameter and one 10 inches, available at any garden center for about $12 total. You nest the smaller pot inside the larger one, pack the gap with coarse sand, saturate the sand with water, and cover the top with a damp cloth. The wet sand begins evaporating immediately. Each gram of water that transitions from liquid to vapor absorbs 2,260 joules of thermal energy from its surroundings. That energy gets pulled directly from the inner pot's air mass, dropping its temperature continuously as long as evaporation occurs. In a 30% humidity environment, a properly built Zeer pot holds an internal temperature 25 degrees cooler than the outside air. At 50% humidity, the gap narrows to around 15 degrees. Above 70% humidity, the system loses most of its effectiveness because evaporation slows dramatically. But in dry climates, which covers most of the American Southwest, the Zeer pot outperforms a plug-in refrigerator on a per cubic foot basis while using zero electricity. You refill the sand with water once every 2 days. That's the entire maintenance schedule. Now, scaling this to room-sized cooling instead of food storage requires a larger surface area and continuous airflow. In 1978, an Arizona engineer named Harold Hay built what he called a Skytherm house in Atascadero, California. The roof consisted of water-filled plastic bags sitting directly on a metal ceiling. During summer days, the bags were shaded by insulated panels. At night, the panels retracted and the water radiated heat upward into the cold night sky. The cooled water then absorbed heat from the rooms below during the following day. Hay monitored interior temperatures for 6 consecutive summers. The house never exceeded 78 degrees inside, even when outside temperatures hit 115. He used no air conditioner and no evaporative cooler. The system was entirely passive, driven by nocturnal radiative cooling and thermal mass exchange. The concept worked so well that the U.S. Department of Energy published a full technical review in 1981. Then the report disappeared from active circulation, and no builder ever implemented the design at scale. The problem wasn't performance. The system cooled exactly as predicted. The problem was that it didn't require a utility connection, which meant no recurring revenue for any industry participant. Utility companies couldn't meter it. HVAC manufacturers couldn't sell equipment for it. And building codes, written with input from those same manufacturers, had no approval category for passive radiative cooling systems. Hay spent the next 20 years trying to convince developers to adopt the design. Not one housing tract in America ever used it. But the physics he proved is now being revisited under a different name by researchers who conveniently forget. Hay did this in the 1970s with plastic bags and plywood. Stanford University published research in 2017 on radiative sky cooling panels that reflect sunlight during the day, while simultaneously emitting infrared radiation toward space. The panels hold a surface temperature below ambient air even under direct sun. The researchers called it a breakthrough. Harold Hay called it a roof pond 40 years earlier. The difference is Stanford's version uses engineered multi-layer optical films instead of water bags. It performs marginally better and costs 50 times more to manufacture. The university filed patents. A private company licensed the technology. And now the same passive cooling system a California engineer built for $1,200 in 1978 is being sold as premium climate tech for $15,000 per installation. You can still build Hay's version this summer for under $400 if you ignore the patent and use the original public domain design his team published in DOE Technical Archives. The materials are simple. Black plastic sheeting, rigid foam insulation panels, a basic pulley system for the shade screens, and enough water to cover your roof surface at 4 inches deep. The installation is straightforward. You weatherproof your roof deck, lay down the plastic, fill it with water, mount the insulated panels on a manual or motorized track, and operate the system on a day-night cycle. It doesn't require engineering review in most jurisdictions because it's classified as a roof-mounted water feature, not a mechanical system. But the moment you understand that a bag of water on your roof can replace a $6,000 air conditioner, you start asking uncomfortable questions about why nobody ever told you. And the answer to that question is worth significantly more than $6,000. It's worth understanding what an entire century of building science was designed to avoid teaching you. Passive systems don't break, which means they don't generate service calls. They don't use metered energy, which means utilities can't profit from them. And they can't be financed, which means banks have no lending product to sell against them. A $400 roof pond that lasts 40 years destroys more than one business model. It destroys the assumption that comfort costs money every single month forever. The Skytherm house in Atascadero still stands. You can see it on satellite imaging at 35.4 degrees north latitude, 120.6 degrees west longitude. The roof is intact. The system still functions. And the current owner pays nothing to cool that structure in July, when the Central California Valley hits 105 degrees for weeks at a time. That's not a metaphor. It's a residential address with a 50-year operational track record and zero cooling bill across 5 decades of continuous summer use. So why doesn't every desert home in America have one? Because in 1983, the Reagan administration cut the Department of Energy's passive solar research budget by 85%. The entire division that had been documenting haze work was dismantled. The technical libraries were boxed and sent to off-site storage, and the researchers who built the experimental homes were reassigned to nuclear and fossil fuel projects. The timing wasn't coincidental. Natural gas utilities had spent the previous decade lobbying state public utility commissions to classify solar thermal systems as a threat to baseload revenue. Internal memos from Southern California Gas Company, later obtained through public records requests, explicitly named roof ponds and passive cooling as technologies requiring regulatory containment. The phrase they used was market interference. The market they were protecting wasn't consumers, it was their own shareholders. And the interference they were preventing was homeowners realizing they could stop paying for cooling altogether. That regulatory capture worked. By 1990, passive cooling had been memory-holed so completely that most architecture students graduating that decade had never heard the term roof pond in any lecture. It's still missing from the majority of HVAC textbooks printed in the United States today. But the laws of physics don't care about lobbying budgets. A water thermal mass exposed to the night sky will radiate heat towards space whether or not the Department of Energy funds the research. And a homeowner who builds the system will stop paying a cooling bill whether or not the gas company approves. That's the part they couldn't legislate away. The knowledge is public domain, the materials are available at any hardware store, and the installation is simple enough that a competent homeowner can complete it in a single weekend. The only missing piece was someone willing to say it out loud. One final detail connects everything we've covered so far. The earth tube, the lime-washed roof, and the roof pond aren't 3 separate systems. They're 3 parts of the same physics solution applied to different parts of the thermal load your house carries every summer. The earth tube intercepts incoming ventilation air and pre-cools it using the ground's stable 55-degree temperature before it ever enters your living space. The lime wash reflects 95% of incoming solar radiation, preventing your roof from becoming a heat source in the first place. And the roof pond radiates stored heat upward to space at night, dumping the thermal mass your structure accumulated during the day. Stack all 3, and you've eliminated every major heat source a conventional air conditioner spends its energy fighting. The solar gain is gone, the ventilation load is gone, and the thermal mass recharge is reversed. What's left is a house that holds 68 degrees in July, without a compressor, without refrigerant, and without a monthly bill. The combined materials cost for all 3 systems on a standard 1/500 square foot home is under $1,000. That's the earth tube, the lime, and the roof pond together. Total installation time is roughly 3 weekends if you're working alone and have never done any of it before. Compare that against a central air system replacement at $8,000 plus $150 a month in summer electric costs, and the return on investment clocks in at under 2 years. After that, it's free, not cheaper. Free. The cooling industry has spent 50 years making sure you never did that math in sequence, because once you do, the entire business model collapses. A homeowner in Phoenix installed all 3 systems in the summer of 2019. His house is around 840 square feet. July peak temperatures that year hit 116 degrees. His indoor temperature held at 71 without air conditioning running at any point during the afternoon peak hours. His total cooling cost for the summer was $0, not reduced. 0. He documented the installation with temperature logging and published the results on a passive building forum. The thread was deleted within a week, no explanation given. But the house still stands, the systems still work, and the temperature logs are archived. You now have the physics, the history, and the materials list for every passive cooling method that works in the real world without a utility connection. The lime is $7 a bag. The earth tube is $300 in pipe and a weekend of digging. The roof pond is $400 in plastic and water. The only question left is whether you're willing to build it. Because the cooling industry isn't going to do it for you. They've had 50 years. And they spent every one of those years making sure you kept paying instead. The dirt under your lawn is 55 degrees right now. The sky above your roof is 3 degrees above absolute zero. And the powder that reflects 98% of sunlight is sitting on a shelf 10 minutes from your house. The physics has been solved since 1947. You just weren't supposed to know about it. The Egyptians figured this out before they built the pyramids. Harold Hay proved it in California with bags of water and plywood. And a teacher in Nigeria saved 100,000 families from food spoilage using 2 clay pots and sand. None of them needed a patent, a utility connection, or an HVAC license. They needed physics and materials you can buy this afternoon for less than a tank of gas. The $500 dehumidifier in your basement is solving a problem that a $5 clay pot handles with chemistry alone. The $6,000 air conditioner on your roof is fighting heat that a lime-washed surface never lets inside in the first place. And the monthly bill you've been paying for 20 years is funding an industry that spent half a century making sure you never connected those two facts. The terracotta pot pulls moisture because calcium chloride wants water more than air does. The Zir pot drops temperature because evaporation steals heat whether you're watching or not.